Hey, Shalom. Want to start off by giving all praises unto Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai, Bahashim, Rachakodash. Double honors to our apostles who are elders who rule well. Blessings and salutations to you brothers out there teaching and enduring truth and sincerity. This Rob, I'm out for the Nebraska camp, and I come to you today with this lesson going over the U.S. and Venezuelan war. Okay, and I want to read an excerpt as well. But I want to, before I do that, I do want to go to an article that is in Associated Press. It came out the 1st of September of this year, which was Monday. Today is Wednesday. It was 2 days ago. It says Maduro says Venezuela ready to respond to U.S. military presence in the Caribbean. All right, because there was another situation where I guess Trump shot a ship, a cartel boat down, which is it's not really news, okay, because that's always been happening. But for it to be news, all right, to make the headlines, there's propaganda at hand, all right, from the U.S. All right, the U.S. has put sanctions on Venezuela way before this, okay. Being that Venezuela is allies with China, Russia, Iran, and Cuba. All right. And these are all places that America, the U.S., or the daughter of Babylon has beef with. OK, so this is not a cause and effect. All right. There's a conspiracy. There's an agenda, all right, because Babylon uses propaganda. So that's why they're publishing. That's why I believe, speaking as a man, they're publishing them shooting these ships, these cartel ships down, because they can paint to the public that this is why we are attacking Venezuela and these countries. But when you go into see here. So I looked up what does Venezuela produce. Okay, it says Venezuela produces oil, iron, aluminum, steel, coffee, corn, rice, and various other agricultural products. Oil is the country's primary export and the most significant part of its economy due to its world-leading natural oil reserves. The nation also produces manufactured goods, though its economy relies heavily on its natural resources. Okay, because Venezuela is rich in resources. And I want to read this from a book real quick. All right, that was AI overview, by the way. I want to read this from a book called How the World Works. Okay, I'm not going to say everything on it because I got a strike last time I did all that. But in a portion of the book, page 9, the Grand Era. What's the title? Of the I don't think it's a chapter, but it's a section. But it's the Grand Era. In the third paragraph on down, it says every part of the New World Order was assigned a specific function. The industrial countries were to be guided by the great workships. Germany and Japan, who had demonstrated their prowess during the war and now would be working under the U.S. supervision. The third world was also to fulfill, and this is where Venezuela comes in at the third world. The third world was to fulfill its major function as a source of raw materials and a market for the industrial capitalist societies, as a 1949 State Department memo put it. All right, and these are declassified statements, so this is not an opinion. All right, it was to be exploited, in Kenyon's words, Kennan's words, not Kenyon, Kennan. It says for the reconstruction of Europe and Japan. The reference are to Southeast Asia and Africa, but the points are general. Keenan even suggested that Europe might begin, it's like it might get a psychological lift from the project of exploiting Africa naturally. No one suggested that Africa should exploit Europe for its reconstruction, perhaps also improving its state of mind. These declassified documents are read only by scholars who apparently find nothing odd or jarring in all this. The Vietnam War emerged from the need to ensure this service role. So they went to Vietnam to keep them, to oppress them, all right, to ensure that they can continue to drain them of their resources. Okay, Vietnamese nationalists didn't want to accept it, so they had to be smashed. The threat wasn't that they were going to conquer anyone, but that they might set a dangerous example of national independence that would inspire other nations in the region. So what happens is that you'll have these rich mineral resource countries, and what happens is that the beast in the system would oppress that country, and their goal is they have a lot of angles. One of the angles that they always push democracy, because once you push in democracy, you can put in a puppet, and then that puppet would then, sell you the goods on cheap or allow you to use horrible labor, what you call it, horrible work environments. So they have you working for cheap. All right, i.e. China, i.e. Vietnam. And there's no problem. They have no problem with it as long as they're getting a cut of the deal. But once they're not getting a cut or they're cut out of the business, then they will use the red herring tactic, okay, which I want to get that real quick. It's an interesting statement. Okay, it says a red herring is a logical fallacy or a literal device that serves to mislead or distract from real issues or central point of a story, argument, or investigation. So it's like if you're accusing somebody and say, "Man, I seen you do it," I heard you say, "I'm gonna fuck you up," N-word. You know what I'm saying? And your whole goal is accusing them and saying, "I seen you do this act," and then that person will say that he's a liar. You can't believe him because I didn't say the N-word. I said MFer. So that's like a red herring thing. Or they'll point out, and Esau does it a lot, they'll point out all like John Jones, for example. Somebody said, "Oh, John Jones is the greatest UFC fighter ever." And then Esau come in with his red herring tactic. It's like, yeah, but it's steroids and him running into running into women and his legal issues. How can he be a champion with these legal issues? So they'll do that, and that has nothing to do with you getting in the ring and fighting. All right. Especially with the steroid accusations, they let Brock. They don't say nothing about Brock Lesnar. This nigga walking around with a belt juiced up, but that's their way. That's their tactics. Okay, so getting back to this book, and I'll just read this excerpt, and then we'll get back to some scriptures. It says the U.S. government had two major roles to play. The first was to secure the far-flung domains of the Grand Area that requires a very intimidating posture to ensure that no one interferes with this task. This is one reason why there's been such a drive for nuclear weapons. The government's second role was to organize a public subsidy for high technology industry for various reasons. A method adopted has been spending in large part. Get this last little part and then we'll get to it. And it says the U.S. government has the public pay for research and development and provides largely through the military and state guaranteed market for waste production. If something is marketable, the private sector takes it over. The system public subsidy and private profit is what is called free enterprise. So what they do is they, Venezuela, Panama, Argentina, Chile, Africa, okay, Iran, even what's going on in Palestine. That's a resource thing that has nothing to do with economics or not economics, but politics and social economics. Like, oh, you're doing us unfair, and America jumps in and they virtue signal. They say, hey, we're going to help everybody out, but their help comes with a cost. All right, just like they were saying they wanted to help Africa out. And they sent Africa a note saying, a note. They sent them a note saying, hey, you gotta, if you want to continue to receive this help, because they'll help you and make you reliant on that help, and then they'll pull it from you if you don't do what they say. And that's what they try to pull with Africa by trying to force the alphabet agenda into their country, and Africa denied it, because why a lot of these type of third world countries are now allying with other powers. Okay, America is a superpower, but there's other powers, Russia, China, for example, that would then, assist those third world countries. Okay, and that's what's going on. And I was looking because when you look at the article, with Maduro saying that Venezuela was ready to respond, he was asking for his citizens. He's in the Caribbean Sea, by the way, and he was asking for his citizens to arm themselves, put his military on the coastlines, and things like that. And it made me want to research something real quick, look up something. Hold on real quick. I'm gonna pause it. So now remember, America, the daughter of Babylon, is in beef with Russia and China. All right. And as being a daughter of Rome, okay, not the daughter of Rome, but the offspring of Rome, or Roman reincarnated, okay, it uses the same tactics. The same way they got Masada, the same way they, they'll do sanctions, okay? And those sanctions are just like sieges. Okay, and they've been trying to lay siege on Russia since they started, since the Cold War. All right, it was successful, but Russia started growing. And so they can't just go and increase it for nothing. You know what I'm saying? What I mean by it is, if you take all the resources, the external resources from Russia or the American resources, which was funny because Putin said, oh, damn, now I can't listen to Tupac, scoffing and they came up. All right. So Russia, after the Cold War, you restrict them of a lot of resources, but Russia had the technology and the science to still grow. And this is another thing I wanted to say, is that America don't want people to know that. They don't want the world to know that you can work together and build something without the U.S. involvement. They don't want the world to know that. All right. So in some type of way, if you're not accepting their aid, you're not accepting their policies, then you are the spawn of Satan. If you're not cutting me in on the deal, you are the spawn of Satan. And we're going to use the red herring tactic of demonizing communism, demonizing all kind of different things. Okay. All kind of angles that they use. They use their propaganda, their news, and their sanctions, and they justify those sanctions because ultimately through capitalism, you need people separated, okay? And they use their propaganda to keep the people separated, but yet still feel involved through voting, even though they're still going to do what they want to do, all right? They're the ones that's giving you shit to vote for, okay? So I looked something up real quick, and it says, Russia and Venezuela maintain a strategic alliance rooted in shared strategic interests, particularly Russia's effort to counter U.S. influence in the Western Hemisphere and Venezuela's need to support against international pressure and economic hardships, because America's putting sanctions on them and restricting them to grow, because Babylon don't want these third world countries to grow. It wants them to be hyper dependent on the U.S. via the dollar, via military. They're doing nothing no different from the mob by giving them like you got to pay for protection, and that payment is your resources. Okay, and in order to I'm trying to word it. In order for that country to need protection, you got to be poor or a lack of resources. You got to, because if I can form an army that's equivalent to yours, then I don't need your protection anymore. So if the U.S. oppressed this country to the point it can't grow strong enough to defend itself, then you can sit there and try to play like, oh, they need help. We'll send food. We'll do this. We'll do that. Because America picks and chooses who they want help, and it's for a specific reason, and it's to get the resources. They'll help you, long as they got a puppet in there that's doing what they want to do. All right, and I don't know if this Maduro, forget the guy's name, get his name real quick. Maduro cat is a puppet or not, because they often use, the reason why I say that is because they often use tyrants, okay, as a deflection, because it's easy to just knock them off and nobody bats an eye, because they're going to say, oh, he was a dictator, so that's good for them. And then you put in democracy, and then here you go, And it also was said in the book that I was reading, How the World Works, that they use, once they hire a dictator, then they drain those resources, have that dictator, do under the table deals with those resources, and leave the country poor, which leaves them to export drugs, in which the U.S. uses as well. Okay, just like the opioid. You know what I'm saying? That was with China, and they with China, Vietnam, things like that. Because China needed, they use opioids a lot. For whatever said reason, and they, I'll get into that. I want to speak on it because I don't got too much detail on it. Just brief through a reading, but there was a lot of opioid trade going on, and the U.S. trying to get involved in that. All right, and China was involved, Vietnam was involved, I believe was like Iraq, and as once I start naming these countries, and you start connecting dots of the U.S., Iraq, the U.S., the Desert Storm and all that. That was all for resources. It wasn't because, oh, we're trying to fight to become the good. That's their virtue signaling to get the people to agree to it. All right, because even the U.S. soldiers would tell you that they was going over there fighting a war, a politician's war. They're not fighting a war for humanity. They're fighting a politician war. They're not fighting for their country. They're fighting for opioids. They're fighting for pineapples. You're fighting for bananas. All right, you shooting and killing people so that way, because these countries don't want to sell you stuff for $2. I mean, pennies on the dollar. They don't want to sell you pennies on the dollar. They want to make their money. And if the U.S. can't get it for the price that they want, they use their military and their might to then attack those countries and oppress them. All right, and they use their CIA tactics to infiltrate and put in, either create coups or set up puppets. Okay, and that's pretty much what they do. All right, and here in Venezuela, that guy hasn't been going, man. Which that's why I believe that he's resisting, because he's rejecting foreign trade. All right, he's not like, he's making the dollar difficult to trade with, as far as the accessibility of it. He's not trading with the U.S. You know what I'm saying, or he's not willing to trade with the U.S. All right, even though a couple oil companies came in there and they fucked them. Venezuela fucked them over, in some type of way. I don't know exactly the details, but the deal went sour at some type of point. But pretty much to sum it up, America's in there for resources. They're not in there to defend the drug cartels. All right, because you're still gonna how else you gonna sell? America is not producing opium. Okay, America's not producing all these drugs. They're not. So where are they getting it from? All right, Vietnam. You ain't gonna pay all that money from China. China's gonna whack you over the head because you're whacking them over the head. All right, so you got to get it from somewhere else. Venezuela, Mexico. Okay, Operation Fast and Furious. All right, that's proof that that drugs are important. That they was giving Mexico guns in exchange for drugs. Okay, so let's get some precepts real quick and we'll sign it off. It says in Genesis 27:39, it says, and Isaac his father answered and said unto him, behold, thy dwelling shall be the fatness of the earth, and of the dew of heaven from above. And by thy sword shalt thou live, and shalt serve thy brother. All right. And it shall come to pass when thou shalt have the dominion, that thou shalt break his yoke from off thy neck. You know what I'm saying? And that was, we had the yoke on their neck, during the time of King David and King Solomon. All right. We had to oppress Edom. All right. As well as you can, that's specifically there, but as well as the Moors also had a yoke on their neck as well. Okay. And they broke that yoke. And when they broke that yoke, they broke it with a sword. And they came out with the sword, taking the fatness of the earth, because the Lord gave Israel the fatness of the earth as a blessing. And he said Esau's dwelling shall be the fatness of the earth, meaning he'll travel from this place to that place. They got, embassies in all these countries. All right. They have business in all these countries. All right. Taking all their resources, which is the fatness of the earth. And the ultimate fatness of the earth is the oil. Okay. Wisdom of Solomon 2:9, it says, let none of us go without his part of our voluptuousness. And that's how Babylon thinks. They love their cell phones. They love their endless chicken wings, endless pineapples. You can get pineapples year round. You get your crawfish year round. You can get, seasonal foods year round, because there's certain places that has great great soil. Okay, because you can't grow all these. Some of these things take a lot of resources. Avocados take a lot of water. Okay, I'm just using that as an example. All right, some of these places, their land, their geolocation allows them to grow food that Babylon would never be able to grow. And then on top of that, Babylon is too industrialized to try to grow anything outside of corn and grain. They produce a lot there. Okay, but it says, let us leave tokens of our joyfulness in every place, which is their statues, their buildings. Okay, it says, for this is our portion, and our lot is this. Let us oppress the poor righteous man, and let us not spare the widow, nor reverence the ancient gray hairs of the age. And that's what they do, man. That's why, the Social Security is up to like 65, 67, around there. That's around the time people die, man. All right? It's around the time people die, and you created a system to where families are supposed to take care of the elderly and the young. Okay? But now you need daycares and nursing homes, because you created a system to where you're working the hell out of the American citizen to where they don't have time for their families anymore. And that was by design. Not only is it by capitalistic greed, but it's by design, because if you're not doing that, then that's extra money spent, that's extra money needed. All right. Then on top of that, who's teaching? You know what I'm saying? Because OG could teach your little jits about the ins and outs while you at work. You know what I'm saying? Grandma could teach you, grandpa could teach you how to fix and change oil and all that while Pops is out there working. You know what I'm saying? So All that was affected, and they did that by design to create consumers. Okay. And that's what Babylon is ultimately about, is creating consumers, and so that the rich, all right, this ain't about Babylon sitting on top, it's about the rich sitting on top via through Babylon. All right. So we're gonna go and get this last verse, Proverbs 22:16. It says, he that oppressed the poor to increase his riches, and he that giveth to the rich shall surely come to want. That's right, because they're gonna go down. They're gonna be in want. That's why it says in Revelation 18 chapter, they that live so deliciously with her, they shall be screaming and matter of fact, let's get it. Let's get it. Let's get it. Gotta get that Revelations. All right. So I read from 2. It says, and he cried and he cried mightily with a strong voice, saying, Babylon the Great, which is America, is fallen, and is become the habitation of devils, which are like, hares, scorpions, rattlesnakes, things like that. All right, not actual demons. Okay. It says, and the hold of every foul spirit and cage of unclean and hateful bird. You see? So, you got birds that specifically dwell in the desert, like vultures and things like that. So all nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication. Their policies, a lot of these people ate off of them doing dirt to these countries. A lot of American allies. All right. And these foreign people that beef with America, they eat off America. All right. That's why America puts sanctions on them and restrict them of American resources, because Americans taking the resource from everybody and they pretty much got it all. So when you put sanctions, you're cutting people off from different countries indirectly. All right. It says, and the kings of the earth have committed fornication with her, and the merchants of the earth are waxed rich through the abundance of her delicacies. You see, because America don't produce too much of nothing anymore. It used to be steel. America used to be producing some shit, man. But after a while, through, through just capitalism, because all that GM Motors and all that went overseas for cheap labor. Okay. It went over there to China. It went over there to Vietnam. It went down to Venezuela to make certain things. And once these people start either rebelling or you're done with them, you paint them as the demons that they are. Gaddafi's and all that. Once they start trying to, okay, we ate with you, it's like you working for a restaurant and you save your money up and you save so much up that you can buy your own restaurant. And it's the thing. The person that owns a restaurant don't know shit about cooking. You've been doing all the cooking. So when you start up your own restaurant, they then oppress you. All right? They driving by looking, oh, he don't have a chimney. Oh, he don't have this. He don't have that. He don't have this. Okay? What's a Good Burger? Just like the movie Good Burger? When niggas had the Mondo Burger and the Mondo Burger was hating on them and doing indirect things and then to try to get them shut down. That's what Esau does, man. All right? But then on TV, he painted as he's being a white knight. All right? So I jumped to verse 7. It says, how much she have glorified herself and lived deliciously, so much torment and sorrow give her. For she saith in her heart, I sit a queen and am no widow and shall see no sorrow. All right, because they that goes into, I'm just thinking of the daughter of Babylon sitting in the desolate virgin daughter of Babylon. Because America think that they're untouchable, man, because of their location geographically. Canada ain't gonna do them nothing. South America don't have the weaponry. Nobody in the Western Hemisphere can militarily do anything, put a dent in America, because they don't have a standing army or no airplanes, no none of that. Everybody on the Eastern Hemisphere has all that. Okay? It says, verse 10, I'm jumping. Verse 10 says, stand afar off for the fear of her torment, saying, alas, alas, that great city Babylon, that mighty city, for in 1 hour is thy judgment come, because it's going to come at a sudden. All right? And the merchants of the earth shall weep and mourn over her, for no man buyeth their merchandise anymore. Okay? Because from lithium to opium to oil to produce, okay? You might not think that produce is a significant thing, but when you go into the mob, you know, didn't really mess with drugs, man. They messed with produce, man. Trade, they got into the real shit, man. Because that's where all the money's at. Drugs is more of an offensive market. But when you control food, that's easy money. All right? Guns and drugs is not, it just sounds bad. But it's not as lucrative as water. Okay? It's not as lucrative as land. It's not as lucrative as what the Lord said money is. Gold, land, and cattle. Resources, agricultural resources. You know, where you stay, the land you have. Because that's one of the largest fights that they had in the Eastern Hemisphere, because nobody could get land anymore because Europe had everything. So they came over here. So they can start businesses and start growing things and start having things for their own. All right? And now Babylon is the new Europe, to where they own everything, and an American citizen can't establish anything unless they borrow Esau's land. You can't open up a t-shirt business. You can't open up a food business. You can't open up a gym or anything without you having to pay some type of resources to Esau. And it ain't just taxes. You got to get certificates. You got to pay mortgages. You got to pay land taxes. You know what I'm saying? There's different innuendos. I ain't like I just give you 10% of what I have. You got to pay for the building certification. You got to get certain things in that building that they want you to have. You got to follow their rules. All right? Because you're not on their land, but they just create a system that's a little bit different from Europe's or the Eastern Hemisphere's way, where it's like you can't do nothing unless we approve of it. You know, where they say you could do anything you want long as you do it like this. And the like this is you keep going to them, going to the enemy for one of all things. You know, just like a restaurant, you got to have a chimney. You got to have a certain type of stove. You got to have, you know, your building has to pass certain codes. You know what I'm saying? If you want to sell liquor, you got to, you know, have a liquor license. You know what I'm saying? You got to have and you got to pay for this, pay for that annually. All right? Annually. You know, you go into a restaurant, if you want to watch a UFC fight may be $90, or well, we say $60 at home. All right? But a UFC fight on TV, in a restaurant, will cost thousands of dollars. Okay? This is the type of games that they play, because they don't want you coming up off of them. They'll come up off of you, but you can't come up off of them. All right? So, yeah, man, I just wanted to, bring that out, man. The wiles of the devil, man. All right? Because, there's a lot of political, economic wars going on. And when you go into the World Press Freedom Index, it'll show you, when you look at, and it's crazy because when you go into the World Press Freedom Index, I notice I'm digressing, but I'm not. All right. It's a map, and I'm gonna put it up in post-production. You could find a Venezuelan article, and I'm not gonna put that. I'm gonna put this up because I really want Akim to see how what countries are considered problematic and what countries are dangerous. What countries are good. You know what I'm saying? And you'll start seeing basically who Babylon is at war with, man. You'll start seeing who they're taking advantage of. All right? The most difficult and problematic people is either you going to war with them or you're oppressing them. Okay? and you're trying to classify it as help. All right, your Brazils, Alaska, multiple parts of Africa. Okay, those type of countries are problematic, but the good countries, you say Canada, Europe, South Africa, Australia, that's all Edomite countries that are benefiting from all the resources. Okay, that's the thing. And then you get to the very serious as Russia, East, Upper East, Sudan, the Middle East. All right, all the people that America just claim as the worst people on planet Earth. Okay, and either or they're too poor to defend themselves or whatever. All right. But yeah, man, I just wanted to bring that out, man. Hopefully this is edifying. We got to be on watch out for the wiles of the devil, because it wasn't, I'm not even sure that they're even legally, I don't know the ins and outs of the war crime, but to my knowledge, Venezuela doesn't have a standing army. If you're asking for citizens to stand on the coast along with your militia, they don't sound like you got too much that you can go to another country and kick ass with. Okay. So America shouldn't be declaring war on these countries, but they're gonna find a way. That's Esau's tactics. Okay. With that being said, give all praise to Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahushai, Bahashim, Rachak Kodash, double honor to our apostles who are elders who rule well. Blessings and salutations to you brothers out there teaching and enduring truth, sincerity. Shalom. Hey, Shalom.